Welcome to the Hair, Babes and Business podcast. My name is Jessica Marie and I am an online educator and hair, beauty and business coach. I worked behind the chair for 14 years and successfully fully booked out 2 of my own hair salons before taking on this role. I have learned the many intricacies of hairdressing and running a spa or salon business. Through Hair, Babes and Business, I, alongside other industry experts, am sharing valuable knowledge to help you grow your business and fast track your success. I am so grateful that you have found our community and have decided to become a part of it. I can't wait to work with you and to move progressively towards a new era in the hair and beauty world. Thank you for being here today. Now let's begin. Hello guys and welcome back to this week's episode of the Hair, Babes and Business podcast. My name is Jess and today I'm bringing you a very special guest episode with the beautiful Cristina. I absolutely cannot wait to share this conversation with you that Cristina and I had. I just wanted to say I feel so unbelievably lucky that I get to work with these incredibly talented people from all over the world. Like, collaborating with women in business, especially in this industry from all over the world, is just such an honor and such a pleasure. And I'm so excited to be sharing this episode with you today because I just absolutely adore Cristina. Her and I got on like a house on fire, and it's so cool that I get to make friends with people from all over the world. Cristina's based in the UK, and how cool that this little South Aussie girl gets to chat to someone from the UK. I just think that's so cool, and I love that the internet has opened the world up to us and allowed us to do that. And that's what makes me so excited about Hair, Babes and Business, is that we really are creating this community where people from all over the world can come together who are sharing this same passion to try and help hairdressers be the best that they can be and help business owners be the best that they can be too. So that just makes me super excited. Today's episode is something a little bit different to what I have normally shared in the past. Cristina is a shadow work coach and a hairdressing coach working in the emotional side of hairdressing, and how the emotional side can really affect your creativity and affect you from being the best version of yourself and the best hairdresser. If you're in a place that's not quite where you should be, or if you're not living as your best self and living your best life, how it can really genuinely affect your creativity and your work and what you do as a hairstylist and a hairdresser. So I just think today's episode is so interesting, and I think the emotional side on hairdressing is really neglected for a really long time. And so I love that there's people out there like Cristina who are bringing it back and really focusing on the importance of sharing this stuff, because it's so valuable to our careers to make sure that we're looking after ourselves first. It's that old saying of you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you're not looking after yourself first, how can you take care of anyone else? And I just think that's so important. And this is something that I feel so passionately about, making sure that we're really recognizing this and learning about this and bringing it into our hairdressing businesses and careers to make sure that we really are taking care of ourselves first, so that we can keep doing what we love so much and doing it for a long time, not just burning out and having to step away from it. This is something that I'm really passionate about. So guys, I'm not going to talk too much more about this because I think this interview is just filled with so much pearls of wisdom and so much knowledge and so much information that I don't really want to share any more about it, because I just want you guys to listen to it and hear it all firsthand in this beautiful interview between Cristina and I think you guys are just going to walk away with such a wealth of knowledge from today's episode. And like I said, I'm going to link all of Cristina's information in the show notes, so if you'd like to learn more about her and what she's doing, or if you'd like to work with her, you can absolutely go and find her and see what she's doing and get involved in that, because I think this stuff is so important. So without further ado, let's jump into today's episode. Welcome back, guys, to the Hair, Babes and Business podcast. I am super excited to share a special guest with you today. Guys, I want you to meet Cristina. Cristina, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
I can indeed. I first of all want to say how excited I am to be on this podcast with you, because I know we're going to have a great conversation. I'm Cristina. I have been in the hair industry for 14 years as a hair colorist. I've worked in the industry as an educator and a manager, and I've done all different roles. And then I most recently, over the last 4 to 5 years, moved into shadow work coaching. And the reason I did that was because I went into education within color education with hairdressers. But what I noticed was the experience they were having was very similar to the experience I'd had in my experience in the career. Of the more I learned, my confidence didn't grow, my creativity didn't necessarily grow, my self-comparison was still there. And it was like this really common theme of knowledge is not equaling more confidence. So I dug into that. I tried to understand a little bit more about why that is the case. And as creatives, I noticed that that is just the baseline of what we feel, the imposter syndrome, the self-comparison, and it's kind of like a lack of empowerment. So through understanding that and through doing the research of that, that's what took me into the shadow work coaching, which is essentially understanding why we have the self-comparison, the lack of confidence, the lack of creativity, and then overcoming those barriers so that we can feel more empowered, more creative, more confident, and actually be happy with what we provide. Because a lot of us, I'm sure you can relate to this, we judge our work so critically. Like we pick out all the flaws, we don't charge enough, we are like comparing ourselves to other people who do different techniques and stuff, and it's just consistent. So to be able to overcome those shadows or those dark parts or those barriers will enable you to put those comparison feelings down and actually flourish as a creative. So that's what I help people do now. And that's me.
That's awesome. And I'm so excited to have you on the show and for the listeners to be able to hear this, because I think it's really important that we do address this, because it's so interesting. Like, I know even when I was behind the chair, having this real feeling that like I wasn't worthy, I wasn't good enough, like it didn't matter how much I learned, I just wasn't good enough, I wasn't confident. Like you said, all those issues with like not charging properly and everything. And it's funny because when you look at other salons online, you just see this narrative that everything's great and they're so confident. And you think, I'm the only one that feels this way. And then you actually have these chats with hairdressers, and it's like, no, we are literally all the same. We're all struggling with these issues. And I think it's almost been a little bit of a taboo subject for a long time, because people just don't really express the truth behind these feelings. So I think it's really exciting to like bring this to the surface and be like, no, those feelings are so valid. They're so normal, but here's what we can do to deal with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny to say that because before I went into the education for color focused topics, because that was a specialty, I thought I want to teach, so I'll just stick with that. But before I did that, I really wanted already to do something a little bit deeper, like the more emotional side of education. But I didn't because of the taboo. And it was like, I must be the only person feeling this. I must be the only person comparing myself to other people because people don't talk about it. And as on Instagram, I put this together, this podcast, or not podcast, kind of like just live series during lockdown on this topic called Confidence Real Talks. And the reason was I wanted people in the industry and who had a bigger following to actually say, I feel this too. And it was just a time to have a conversation of really just owning up to the fact that we all feel this. And it's not about like not feeling it. It's about being honest with it and then trying to overcome it rather than being like, oh no, I don't. And then as an industry, I think it's normal for us to think everything has to be perfect. We're in an industry that cares about what everything looks like. So it really filters into pretend everything is okay. And yeah, at the end, what that creates is a lack of confidence, a lack of creativity, not charging enough. And ultimately that is the gap that 100% I think people need to fill, because look what you can have if you do it.
That's so interesting. Something you said then just really stood out to me, and I think it's really important. Is that it's so true. Like it's what we do. We give to people and we love on people and we care for people. We want to make people feel better, but it actually is like a looks-based industry, and you kind of lose some of that heart when it's so focused on this outside thing. When realistically, we are pouring love and care into people. You kind of lose that sometimes because of
Yeah.
that. So I think that's really interesting that you just said that. And I thought, yeah, that's a nice little takeaway point there. But I'd love to ask you, what are you doing now to help people overcome this?
Yeah, this is my favorite topic ever. So it's called shadow work coaching, and I know a lot of people probably wouldn't have heard of that, but it's essentially getting into the deep emotion of why we feel these things in the first place. So for example, if we're feeling self-comparison, or one that I know a lot of us will relate to, which is people pleasing, um, giving our power away or like questioning our skill, even though we know technically we have a lot of knowledge, it's that questioning of the self that is really getting in the way. So the shadow work coaching is getting into why are we questioning that? What experience has made us question that? What belief makes us question that? Or what is our conditioning, whether it's from our early years or even the industry? Because the industry definitely helps us be a certain way, even though it's not helpful. It creates a certain type of artist. And it's not to hate on the industry, it's just the more you become aware of it, the more empowered you become. And another thing that comes up a lot in my coaching sessions is this idea of trusting brands and trusting the labels within the industry. And this goes across every industry, it's not just hair. But if we trust them like wholeheartedly, we end up giving our power away. because we can't then create fully. We have to create according to what they say. And of course, there's some kind of science that may come into some of that. But ultimately, what we're doing is we're relying so much on the power outside of us that we question ourselves. We self-compare. We lack confidence and creativity. So shadow work coaching is about getting into why do we feel that? Why do we have those emotions? And not necessarily get rid of them totally because we are human at the end of the day, but understand tools and techniques to work away from it so you can get less of it. Or if you do have a lack of confidence, becoming aware of when that's happening and how to change it. So ultimately what it will give you is more confidence, more creativity, more ability to really trust yourself rather than putting your power outside. And ultimately it really does unleash what your true creativity is, because I think a lot of us don't really know what our creativity is because it's based so much on what's going on outside of us. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what work coaching is. But it really goes, it can go quite deep or it can go pretty surface level. It depends on how deep the issue is. But yeah, it is a really empowering, amazing self-awareness that happens from it, and you create from a whole different place. It's incredible.
That's really cool. And before we go back and talk a bit more about the shadow work and stuff, that's a really interesting point that you just made there about the fact that these hurdles that we've got in our life that have created blocks and things, it really can stunt our creativity. And that's something I'd never really thought about before. But yeah, I guess a lot of people would probably be holding themselves back from creating their best work because of things that have happened that they haven't properly dealt with.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this was something I noticed in myself, and I'd say like 99% of my students was because ultimately creativity is vulnerability. We're putting our work out there, it's there all the time, it's on hair, like it's not something that it's already a very vulnerable position to be in, to be doing such a job that requires a lot of trust. So there's already a vulnerability there, but creativity in general is vulnerability because you're putting your art out into the world. And I think that's what a lot of artists miss, and I call us artists, but creatives, whatever you want to call yourself. That's what we miss because we're not taught that that is a huge part of creativity. So if we're coming from a place of not wanting to show vulnerability or not wanting to be weak, because a lot of vulnerability is seen as weak, or really just not wanting to put our full selves out there, then of course we're going to be creating from that same place. So we're going to be maybe doing things that are a little bit safer or a little bit more comfortable or what we know rather than trying something brand new. And so it takes the experimental side away, it takes the fun and the joy away. It takes ultimately what I found is it takes the whole reason we came into hairdressing or whatever creative thing you do away. And it's like I came into the industry, I'm sure you can relate, just because I love the craft, I love creating, I love like serving people as well. But then it took that away because I was like, oh my God, this is really vulnerable. This is really scary. This is really like, it makes me lack confidence sometimes because everyone's doing such amazing work. And it just takes all that joy away. So yeah, if we're creating from a place of a lack of confidence or a lack of vulnerability or wanting to show that, then that's the kind of art we're going to be creating. And there's like a whole world of creation outside of that that we haven't accessed yet, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think something that I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this, because I felt a lot freer before COVID happened. And then after COVID happened, it was like a different level of expectation from clients. Like they wanted more and they probably wanted it for less, and they wanted it. I think people became more educated too. So they really knew a lot more than what they did before. And suddenly you really did feel these like restraints and a bit of fear around it because it was like, I'm a bit scared to break rules or take educated risks because I am scared that if this isn't exactly what the client is asking for, like the repercussions of that can be really challenging as well.
Yeah, I found exactly the same. It was kind of like the clientele was split quite a lot. There was one half that was like, oh, I haven't seen you for ages. Do what you want. I trust you. Go and do your thing. But then there was the other half that was like you said, a lot more educated, a lot more restraints was the word you said, because that ultimately, whether the restraint is coming from the client or from yourself, because of what we've learned about like being perfect and charging the exact amount, like there has to be the right amount that pleases our clients and all these restraints, they very much can come from the client as well, which then ends up feeling like, for example, the prices. This is like always a topic that I find this resonates with. Whatever the client imprints on us about what price should be is what we then believe and take with us. And then we act from that place with every other client. And it's like whatever that restraint is, whether it's from the industry, yourself, or your client, we will take that with us. And then that's what creates this like lack of confidence or not really like questioning ourselves and not feeling like we have enough knowledge, or is it going to be good enough? And it's definitely, it was heightened during that time of life. But yeah, it's those restraints that make us then question ourselves. So it's about, like, from my perspective, it's about understanding where can we take that power back. And it's not, a lot of the time when we talk about getting power back, it gets a bit like skewed for ego. But ultimately, in my opinion, it's actually going against that, because I think this industry is full of ego. I don't know if you agree with that.
Oh,
But it's
absolutely.
okay, great. Because I'm actually yet to speak to one person in this industry that doesn't agree with that. So I'm like, there must be some person, somebody's creating this ego. Um, but I think some of that is this whole idea of it is a looks based industry. So I think some of it is from there. But ultimately, getting your power back is about understanding that we don't need to always be in charge and always have our ego like protecting us. It's about being okay with you have vulnerability, being okay with the fact that you don't always charge like or charge correctly, or make things perfect, or you make mistakes. It's about removing that, and that's what gives you power back to create more. But yeah, I went off on a tangent there, but it's all about this idea of restraints, and they come from all angles, and it's about being aware of what angle they're coming from.
No, and I absolutely love that you brought that up too, because I think I'm glad that you went on the tangent, because I think that's really important what you said there. And I think it's so true. Like, what the work that you and I are trying to do is very much that we're trying to empower women in business and empower this, like, the industry that has had a bit of a bad name for a while now, and it's trying to break that stigma and break down those walls that we have. But I think you're so right. Like, a lot of the time people hear those things like take my power back or be empowered in that, and they don't see it as this good thing. It doesn't have to be like going in full force, all guns blazing. It's just like owning who you are and owning your business and getting to a place where you're comfortable with the decisions that you're making. And I really like that you pointed that out, because I think it's important to say like being empowered and taking the power back isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something I see in my space a lot as well with coaching. It's this kind of resistance to being able to own yourself, and resistance. I'm going to say it. I think this word gets thrown around a lot and it's like misconstrued, but it's self-love essentially. And I don't mean self-love as in have a bubble bath. I mean like self-love, like really being aware of who you are, what you came to create, what you came to do in this earth. And it's like being okay with that, owning that. And that's what gives you your power back. But that is what gets confused with, like, I don't know, maybe is it a bit too woo for certain people, or is it too ego? Like there is a bit of a misconstrued idea about what that is. But ultimately, if there's anything anyone can take away from this podcast, is the fact that that is what empowerment is being okay with who you are and what you came to create, and not having to hide it. Like being fully okay with this is me and this is what I want to create and serve. And yeah, I think there's a real beauty in being empowered, and it's just the resistance is what gets in the way of it.
I really love that. And I think that this generation is the generation that's starting to come to terms with the fact that we do need to do this self development and this self work. And this is something that we spoke about just before I started recording, is that I guess a lot of us came from a generation where it was almost like shunned to talk about your emotions and shunned to talk about like maybe some things that have happened that are causing you to not have such confidence or not help you to progress to the next level. But our generation is really this generation of taking that back and being like, no, like I know this thing happened. I don't love that. So I want to do the work to fix it, to make sure that that's not stopping me from getting where I need to go. And I guess that's kind of the whole point of what you're doing. I would love for you to take us further into that journey of what that kind of looks like.
Yeah. So I definitely agree. There's definitely like what I guess I would call like a spiritual awakening happening in the world. I think this era, this like generation is definitely making a shift. And
Yeah.
it is essentially, to go deeper into it, it's that shift into awareness. And I try and say this in like a less woo way, but it's like the awareness of self. And the more you are aware of yourself, meaning your experiences, your beliefs, your conditioning, that's essentially what the coaching but healing is about. And when I say healing, it's the idea of coming to awareness of your conditioning. So like I said earlier, it could be conditioning from childhood, it could be conditioning from the industry itself, it could be conditioning from your clients or your circle of people. There's conditioning happening everywhere. It could even be conditioning from like what you watch and what you read and what you listen to. These things, which is why I love platforms like this, because it's giving a chance for people to listen to something that is conditioning in a better way. But it's about like realizing where is that conditioning coming from, awakening to that, and then actually being okay to dig into it. So that is to go deeper into what like the shadow work coaching is getting into the experiences, the beliefs, and the emotions that have come from those experiences and those beliefs, and therefore what causes you to act in a certain way, believe certain things, be a certain way to other people, hide yourself, compare yourself to people, lack confidence. I always refer to this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect as well, which is like the more you know about something, the less you think you know. So it's that kind of idea of understanding how much knowledge you have, how creative you can be, and then not questioning that. Why are we doing that? What has made me believe that I should do that? And and this is not to hate on society. This is just to become aware of it. Society is kind of crafted to make us question ourselves. And it's really about going deeper into why am I questioning myself? Do I need to? And what is that creating in my life? Because ultimately, if I follow this pattern of conditioning, I'm going to feel like I'm not good enough. I'm going to feel like I'm not confident, creative, all those things. And so, if you want to get away from that, we're never going to be able to change society. We're never going to be able to change the industry. We're never going to be able to change anything outside of us. But if we can change our response to the emotion of those things, our world outside will change. That's the irony, is that technically things change outside of you. So if we can do that, not only in our craft, but in life, everything is so much, it's like a veil is lifted. And it's just essentially lifting the veil of the conditioning. I hope that explains it well.
Absolutely. I absolutely love what you just said. And I think it's so true. We feel like we are free people and we feel like we have this sense of freedom and we feel that way. But I actually read something about this and it was saying, even from the time that you are in school and a child, you have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. And it's like, why do we get taught from such a young age that we have to ask permission to do things that are just normal human functions? But it is almost a bit of that conditioning. And again, we're not saying it's like this evil thing and we're being controlled or whatever, but it is trying to break away from that there are so many limitations. Like it is really unlimitless for what you can do if you can break away those like constraints that you've had your whole life.
Completely. It's exactly that, because sometimes I have these kind of conversations and it does turn into like quite a society hating conversation. And it's really not about that, because I used to come from that place myself when I first became aware. And I think some of us go through that kind of journey. It's like, oh, I hate it. And then you realize there's actually empowerment in it. But it's like, it makes sense. We have to have some kind of ruling or some kind of systems or some kind of like, yeah, a system to make it work. There is millions of people, billions of people, like we have to find some kind of system. However, that system, and we know this even in like neurodiversity and all sorts of like other topics where we know the system does not suit everybody. And so if it doesn't suit everybody, then that's going to go down to a personal, emotional level as well. So those systems, whether it's conditioning from like school, even like you said, or your parenting or whatever it is, it may not suit the version of you that is here to create or here to be what they came to be. And ultimately, a lot of us, I think, we end up becoming a version of ourselves that is really dimmed and really like less than what we could be, because we stick to the conditioning that we were taught, even though it doesn't serve us. So that's like my one key message in the world. Like I would love everyone to like break away from this conditioning, because it not only benefits places like your industry, your career, your craft, but it also like outside of life, in your relationships, even like health, every area. If you really like tune into the empowerment you can find within, every area becomes so much more free, so much easier, so much more like fulfilling. And I think fulfillment is one of those things that as humans we really seek, but we struggle to find. And that's ultimately why, because we're not doing what we came to do, we're doing what we were taught to do. So yeah, there's like so many areas that plays into, but it's just the bottom line there is like, if you can find your empowerment, everything changes. I really
So
believe that.
powerful. So powerful. And I think, how often do you hear people say like, I just don't have enough time, or there's just so many things to do. And it's like, if you could get away from that and find that empowerment, you'd actually find it easier to place more importance on the things that you love and make sure that they're the things you're prioritizing.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned time, because, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this as well, because time for me is actually, I used to be one of those people that was like, I don't have enough time, especially working a busy schedule in the salon. I just don't have enough time to eat well. I don't have enough time to spend time with my friends and family, just all the things I love, I don't have time for. And ultimately, we know what kind of life that creates is just pure stress. But time, what I realized through the healing is it's literally an ideology. It is like something we create. And the more we believe, because everything is shaped by our beliefs, right? So the more we believe there is not enough time, the more we're going to find a schedule and a lifestyle that creates not enough time. So if we play into this idea as well, that just to go off on another tangent, the idea of time also comes from this thing of like, I have to do a certain amount in every day. And the only reason we feel like we have to do a certain amount is because in order to be worth something, we need to have achieved a certain amount. And so therefore we're creating this cycle of like, I have to do enough to be enough, therefore I don't have enough time. And if I don't have enough time, I don't do the things I enjoy. And there's just like this whole cycle we create. But if you just dropped this belief of there isn't enough time, and obviously there's tools and ways that we can do that. But if we drop that belief, time is like endless, like it just keeps coming. There's more and more time. And we don't have to fill up every second. And I think again, that's part of like the conditioning of, again, not to say a bad thing about the conditioning, but the conditioning of our industry partly is that you have to squeeze as much in and into every second as you can. And if you're not doing enough, or you're not good enough, or there's another stylist or whatever that's better than you. And this comparison we also take into our life outside of work. So it creates this cycle. So this is kind of just to give an idea of like where the conditioning can start and how it can play out into the rest of your life. But yeah, time is something I could talk about until the end of time. Like there's just so much to say about it. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
I love that. And I think, there's that kind of that example of like, you hear about it, like little children in like a third world country who have literally nothing, but they're like so much happier than a child here who's literally got everything. And I think it kind of plays into that as well. It's because they're not like having their schedules filled with a million different things, and they know that what they have got is so good. And it is just that concept of like, it's mindset. It's not really what you have or like your time. It's your mindset.
Yeah, completely. And this is actually a topic that I've been talking about recently, so that the frequencies are aligning very much so, is this idea of the idea that abundance is a mindset. Because I actually grew up in like, we weren't like very, very rich, but we were not like struggling at all. And we had everything as kids that we needed, and like there was nothing lacking. But my parents were so in the lack mindset that that's what I learned, that we were missing things. We should have had this, we should have had that. We didn't have enough money for this. Money doesn't grow on trees, which I think is a really common mindset around money that we grow up with. Um, and so it's just like this complete idea that no matter what your reality is showing you, abundance and lack is all in the mind. So we can create like this most abundant life materialistically, and then think we don't have enough. We still lack this, we still lack that. So it's all about like how you're perceiving the reality. And like you said, with those children, it's they have the pure abundance of what they need in life, and they're grateful for that. And that's what I think a lot of us, especially like the modern society, we are missing. And it kind of comes into our industry and career as well, because it's like we've achieved all these things, we know all these things, we have all these skills and techniques, but it's still not enough. So, and that not enoughness comes from some kind of experience or conditioning. So it's about getting into that root. But yeah, like it's abundance is such a mindset thing. It's nothing to do with your reality outside. I fully, yeah, I'm so glad you said that.
I really love that you said that too, because yeah, I don't know. There was a post I saw, and I wish I could remember who posted it. I can't. If I do end up finding it, I'll pop a link in the show notes. But there was a business owner who put up a post about that, and she was saying, you know, abundance and wealth to me is the fact that I can take Tuesday afternoon off to go pick up my son from school. And I love that. Like, we need, like, success is going to look different for everybody. Success isn't necessarily having like the seven-figure salon in multiple locations. Like, success can be the fact that like I can work not that hard, make a good amount of money, and live my best life.
Yeah, exactly. It's different for everyone. And this is something that I think we don't get conditioned into us from early enough. It's like this whole thing that certain jobs and certain income is what success looks like. But again, this is happening in this generation. I think this is like the spiritual awakening that people are shifting that idea of success. But it is like the more we can talk about it, the better, because the more we understand that success does not look the same for everybody, the more so much changes as a result of that belief because we accept people more. We stop striving for something that we really do not want, which a lot of us get into this habit of. We stop comparing ourselves. We stop questioning what we've come here to do. We stop questioning whether we're good enough. Like all of these things come as a result of just accepting that things look different for different people, or success looks different for different people. And this is like one of the reasons I initially wanted to go into like a deeper education than just the color education was this question of success. Like everyone's doing this, that means I need to do this in the industry, or the idols are doing this, that means I need to copy them. And it's like, you can copy them if you want to, but if you do not want to do that, not only is it going to be a boring journey because it's not for you, but also you may not be as successful because your heart's not in it. And so therefore you're going to compare yourself even more. So it's about like figuring out where is your heart rather than what does this title of success really look like to everyone, because it is just different for everyone.
I adore that. This is something I harp on about until I'm blue in the face. But
Mm.
I think at the moment, a lot of us see this beautiful aesthetic feed that's like blonde after blonde after blonde after blonde. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Like if that's your jam, go ahead and do it because we know that that's not easy to create. But if that's what you're constantly putting out there because that's what's aesthetic and that's what's trending at the moment, but really in your heart of hearts, you want to be like a vibrant colorist and do like vivid colors, then that's just, you're not going to feel that sense of satisfaction and that sense of purpose if you're creating this because it's just what is trending at the moment and it's not really where your heart and soul lies. I think that's so important.
Yeah, completely agree. And I actually had this myself in my own career with hair. Like I was consistently told to niche down into a certain look. And I thought niching down into color was enough because I love all types of color. Like I'm one of those people that I want like my day to be different. I don't want to create a blonde every day or brown every day or whatever. But I found myself like niching down into things like the balayage and all of that because that's what was popular and that's what everyone was doing and that's what was getting the views and that's what I was comparing myself against. But actually, all that created was a career that I really was not enjoying. And I was like, oh, I miss doing the browns, I miss doing the vivid, I miss doing all this stuff. But deep down inside, there was a voice going, no, but you need to stick to this. And it's like, whose voice is that? That's like one of the like really key questions I find is like, if you feel like you need to do something, question what voice that is. Like, whose voice is that? Where has it come from? And is it actually true? Because it was not true at all. And then I went back into doing a bit more of a mixture and I was like, oh, I can breathe again. Like, I actually am doing something I enjoy now. So there's like a real beauty in niching down to a certain extent, but it's only a beauty if you feel that your heart is in that space. So yeah, like listening to the heart and what you enjoy, because you can only, I'd love to hear your opinion on this actually. It's like you can only really be successful from what you enjoy. Would you agree?
I I can 100% agree with that. I think it's so important because if there's not the passion there, you can't do it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a real struggle. And I don't know if you tell me if you've been in this situation as well before, but a lot of people I speak to, and me included, it was a struggle to get to a goal that I didn't want to get to because the joy and the passion and the heart wasn't there. But it created this cycle that a lot of people think is normal, that you have to work hard and you have to do more and you have to like literally work your fingers to the bone just to get to this thing. But I would go as far as to say, if you're struggling so hard to get to this thing, it's not what you want. Like it's really quite simple. But yeah, it's hard to see that outside if you haven't taken yourself out of that cycle, if that makes sense.
I also
Yeah.
think that if it's a real struggle for you, then it's not really your strength because something that you love and you're super passionate about and something that you're good at is just going to come naturally to you. I'm not saying that you don't have to put in hard work because, of course, you do, but
Yeah.
it shouldn't be at that point where you're just like dragging your feet every day thinking, like, when will this ever work for me? When will this ever end? This is exhausting. This is draining. If that's how you feel, I don't really think it's what you really want to be doing.
Absolutely agree. And I think this is one of the things within hairdressing that gets really pushed to the side because it comes with this like lack of wellness in the industry, like not eating, not drinking, not taking breaks. That's like a real normalized thing. And it's like we're creating a cycle or a career that's even harder than it should be. And then making us question everything, making us question our craft. When actually, if we just put those basic needs back into our day to day, then we'd probably find we enjoy it a lot more. We'd find that connection back to why are we here rather than this is a struggle and I have to do this because I've been told I have to do this or I've been conditioned that this is normal. But I'm sure you agree, but I think that is one of the normalized or conditioned things in our industry that is the most detrimental. This idea of like, you have to do more, you have to fill every second, don't take your breaks, don't do this, don't do that. And it's like, how far can we go with that? Like, I actually question as an industry, can we keep going like that? And I'm hoping part of this like awakening with the generation is going to shift that. And yeah, fingers crossed that is the result. And I'll keep talking about it as much as I can. So that is the result. But it's like, we have to at some point understand this is not normal, you know?
I think it has to change, because I think burnout is more real now than ever. And I think because there's the pressure of like also being the perfect hairdresser in the salon, but also being the perfect hairdresser online. And it feels like there really is no end to it. So I think if we don't start taking the power back in that sense and start putting those, like you said, basic human needs first, it's not gonna work, and the industry will end up fizzling out because nobody's gonna do that forever. It's just impossible. You can't keep doing that and not have consequences for doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's crazy because the whole reason we continue to do that is because we think it's what gives us worth or gives us like makes us good enough. And that is like one of the deep reasons why I believe in like the shadow work coaching, because if we're doing something so detrimental to our body and our health just because we think it makes us good enough, or if it makes us more successful, or whatever that blank is, why are we doing that? Like there's a whole question there. We wouldn't be doing that conditioned thing or that conditioned behavior if we really truly understood the point of why we are here and the detriment it has on our body, on our health, and our mindset as well. Because then it just creates more of a cycle that we need. We're in this, it's comfortable now, let's just carry on. So yeah, it's like we only do that because we think we're not good enough, or it will make us good enough if we do more. And that, I think, in society, but this definitely in our industry, it's like this common theme is that we do more, or we struggle because it makes us good enough. That's because we have lacked feeling good enough in a certain place before. So yeah, it really plays into our everything, and I think it's really just about becoming more aware of it, because these things are happening with outside of our awareness. It happened outside of my awareness for years. But yeah, if it's like a little takeaway is just like become more aware. Why are you doing things? That's what I'd love to like increase people. Increase that chance of being able to ask that question. What am I doing and why? I think that's a really powerful question to ask.
Yeah, I really love that. And, even I remember when I first started out as an apprentice, and there was like this ongoing joke about like the hairdresser's diet was Red Bull and cigarettes, and like how toxic. But like
I
that's what
know.
we were all brought up believing, like that's just normal, and you've got to have the Red Bull to get you through the day. You don't have time to eat, so have a cigarette. And I remember like when I first opened my first salon being like, I will never, ever allow my staff to not take a lunch break. Like they will always have time for a lunch break. I want them to sit down, eat something, have a drink of water, have a coffee, whatever. But we're not doing that anymore.
I love that, because that's like it takes a person to see the conditioning and change it. And that's what creates, obviously, like what's happening now, this shift into more awareness. So thank you for doing that and being an example of that, because I rate that so much, because there's so many salons that still to this day are not like that. And it really shocks me, even like in this day, with this more awareness, that that is still the case. It's definitely happening less and less, but I do think that there needs to be a bigger shift with that. And this is again one of the examples of not being able to change what's outside of you, because it's one thing looking for salons that offer the lunch breaks or offer that kind of well-being sense of that feeling. But if we can't find it, we need to be the ones to have the power and say, no, this is what I'm going to do. And again, it's not about like taking charge and being in control. It's about understanding and valuing your health, your wellness, whatever it is you want to look at, and then put your foot down and say, this is what I need to survive. Basically, this is not like a luxury thing to have food and water and a toilet break. But above, beyond that, it's not just the survival. It's like to work my best, to be the most creative, to be able to serve my clients the most, which ultimately is going to give the salon the income they need. I need to have X, Y, and Z, and understanding that that X, Y, and Z is going to be different for every person. And this is actually mainly, I'd say, to the salon owners and like salon managers to get that perspective in there, that this is going to be different for every single person. Not every person needs half an hour, even down to the key of like how long each service takes. That's again becoming more normalized, but we need more space to understand everyone creates differently. And that again, would love to hear your opinion on this, was something I struggled with in the salon as an employed stylist was I was only given certain times and I always took a lot longer than most people to do certain looks. And it would really lower my quality if I was having to do it in a certain space and time. I wouldn't be able to serve my clients as well. The connection with my client was not there because all I'm thinking about is time. And yeah, as a salon owner, is that something that you've experienced as well?
Yeah, it's such an interesting concept because I always would think about it as if like, would you go to a famous artist and be like, I want a canvas done of this particular thing, but you've got an hour to do it. Like it just
Yeah,
wouldn't happen. It's so crazy to even think that you could ask that of somebody. But
yeah,
that doesn't happen in our industry. Like it's like, no, like an hour for a full head of foils, whether that person has like 80 strands of hair on their head or has like thick, long, crazy curly hair. Like, and it's just crazy that like we can kind of categorize everything into this 1 hour, which is just not fair. You can't do that. And again, like you said, I think hairdressing has changed from say, well, I started in 2011, and back then it was very much everyone was kind of having the same thing, and it was very methodical and very like strategic with where you place your foils and all that sort of stuff. But we've really stepped away from that with things like balayage and creative color and all that sort of thing, and you just can't put a time limit on it because it is really creative work now. It's not being done all the same way. And we are really starting to factor in those other things like different hair types or different colors and all those sorts of things. And it's not a one size fits all.
yeah, completely. And this, I think, comes down a lot into the whole idea that creativity cannot work with constraints. And I get it, like there has to be some kind of system because, we need to be able to, well, we don't need to, but we want to be able to serve a certain amount of people or, business is business. But at the end of the day, if we're putting constraints on creativity, the creativity is not going to be there. Like it's only going to be to a certain level. And then again, it's going to cause the artist to question the creativity and it creates a cycle of like questioning what we can make and create and like how confident we are with our skill. And then it's like, if you take yourself out of those constraints, creativity flourishes, creativity flows. And what's crazy as well, which may be worth knowing, is that in your brain, your creativity and like analyzing physically can't happen at the same time.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to create and analyze at the same time, your creativity is going to diminish like bit by bit in that moment. And that's what I find crazy because in schooling systems, we're taught to use both bits at the same time. And then obviously that filters into creative crafts and careers. And it's like we're so used to trying to use these parts of our minds at the same time, but they do not work together. So again, another like takeaway is like if you're trying to create, just pause the analysis, like pause the constraints. I know time is one of those things if you're in a salon that we have to be aware of, but it's just everything else, any other constraint, just try and pause it while you're creating because that will allow more space for creativity. And that's something I really honed in on is this like idea of trying to do both. And it was like, it's just not working. Because when you take yourself out of the salon or, out of any constraints and you're just doing something on a doll's head or doing something on a friend, it's like, wow, I just created this thing because there was no pressure. But yeah, it's just, yeah, trying to pause both and drop the belief that you have to do a certain thing within your creativity. It's a crazy concept, but it does work.
It definitely does. And I think that's something that I've seen a bit and talking to other hairdressers, that idea of having to have like multiple people in at a time, we're really kind of moving towards more of that, having the one-on-one sessions with people. And it does eliminate a little bit of that pressure when it comes to the time. Like if you're doing a full head of foil, say, and your next client's sitting there and you're only halfway through, is
Mm,
horrible and it's very stressful. And you're not going to do as good a work as you can if you don't have anyone else in there. You can take your time, breathe, work through it, and do what you need to do. So I love that
yeah.
that's kind of coming into play a little bit now as well. I think people are becoming more aware of that because, again, it's less stressful for the client, but it's so much less stressful for us. And it opens up that opportunity to be a bit more free and have a bit more flexibility and creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you said breathe as well, because that's one of the modalities we use a lot in shadow work coaching is breath work. And as coming from an industry where we are running on high adrenaline and stress a lot of the time, it is like I've now realized how important breath work is. And I don't even mean to say like the whole like high techniques of breath work, but even just a simple breath, like taking time away from the stressful situation. Because usually we, as humans, we're like, it's stressful, just get through it. And what we do, we're creating more stress, more anxiety, more pressure, and then we're going to keep acting from that state of pressure. But like breath is just such an important key thing. Keeps us alive, but it also keeps us like away from stress, keeps our body calm, and it actually enables us to respond to stress better. But we are so wired to be like, get through the stress, and forget to breathe, forget to take a minute, forget to go to the toilet or whatever it is. But yeah, breath is like, if you can just come away and take a breath, so important, like so powerful, more powerful than I think we like to believe.
You know, it's so funny. I very rarely talk about this kind of thing, but when I was an apprentice, I had someone who was teaching me, and I love her. She's a beautiful person, but I know the pressure on her to teach me was coming from the higher powers, you know what I mean? But I remember when I was doing a full head of foils, she put an hour on the timer, put it on the trolley, and she'd come up to me when I was like in the middle of foiling, and she'd go faster, 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 and just kept doing it. And it was years after that that every time I'd be doing a full head of foils in my brain, I could hear her going faster, 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 faster.
Wow.
And one day I literally did that. I just stopped. I took a deep breath. I was like, it's okay. Like, just take the time you need. It's going to be okay. And it did. It made such a difference. And my work was better. And like, I actually moved faster because I wasn't in this state of stress.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a powerful story because that voice is an idea of like a presentation of how a conditioning can stay with you even years on, like it's still there. And because the body holds the score, right? The body will remember whatever it's been through if it's not moved through. So that is like a powerful story because like then the breath to be able to take your time and like create more. Because when you're in a state of stress and survival, you can't focus properly. You can't like create at all, like, let alone focus. You can't create. But if you allow your body to like breathe and calm down and the nervous system to like go, okay, we're safe, then creation can flow after that. But trying to create from this state of pressure and anxiety and time constraints is like, again, very normalized. But I'm so glad you shared that story because it's a really powerful story for your like listeners to hear that that is just a simple change you can make in an environment that we're in daily, to calm the nerves and like really listen to the body essentially is what we're doing. And that's really powerful.
Thank you. Well, I would like to know because I feel like everyone who's listening to this episode has probably listened to something that we've said and gone, yep, I've struggled with this, or yep, I've dealt with this, or yep, I definitely have a story that I've taken with me or something that's affected me that's blocking me from being where I need to be. If someone were to come and visit you, what is the kind of process that you would go through with this shadow work and what you're doing to help them get through what they're going through?
Yeah, so there's a few different avenues, but I'll start with like the most straightforward, which is that we would talk about doing a 6 month essentially coaching package. The reason we do 6 months, I used to offer one-to-one like occasional appointments, let's call it, so you can book as and when. The problem with that is that if this work is not continuous, the conditioning just creeps back in. And so the most powerful way you can make these changes is if you're doing consistent work. So the 6 month package will basically dive into the main core beliefs that you would be holding on to, that are affecting you and creating any barriers. And then getting into that over those 6 months, getting into how to rewire those beliefs. The process that I work through that I've created is unlearn, adapt, and manifest. So the unlearn process is the first part of the 6 months, is all about like, what are the beliefs? What do we need to drop? What beliefs do we need to unlearn? The next step is adapt. So it's like rewiring into new beliefs. And then manifest is all about making sure you have not only the beliefs, but the basically the conditioning to make sure that going forward, you know how to overcome those same potential beliefs coming back. So that's essentially the process over the 6 months. So if anyone wants to come to me, we'd obviously start with a phone call. We would understand like where you're at. Is this the right thing for you? Because coaching is not for everyone. And that's what I would love people to understand. It's not for everyone. It is for, if you feel ready for it, although ready is totally an idea that we can, it's total ideology, but the feeling ready meaning like you're aware that there's something that needs changing. You've tried other things and they haven't worked. But you are knowing there's something still to try, then this is when coaching is the right thing for you. So that's what we'll do. We'll talk through whether you're at that stage, if this is the right next step. There are other things I can suggest if it isn't the right next step, but generally it would be if someone's already had that phone call, had that awareness. And then that's what we would start, is that unlearn, adapt, and manifest process over 6 months. And coming out the other side, you can continue if you feel like more work needs to be done. Or usually after that 6 months, you're already at a stage of much more awareness and much more ability to change beliefs and really like stop them in their tracks before they continue affecting your behavior. So that's the process. That's kind of what would happen. But yeah, there's like loads of other programs I do, like ongoing support, community. There's so much there. So it's really just about figuring out what is that first step and where do we go after that. But that would be the process.
That's amazing. And I wanted to ask you, I know that you will be able to answer this question, but I think there'd be a lot of people listening who this would probably be something that's coming up for them. If they don't already know what is the problem or what's caused these beliefs, is that an issue, or is this something that you can help them discover?
Yeah, absolutely not. That is ultimately the point of the coaching, because a lot of people they may not be aware of the belief that's the issue. They won't be aware of the conditioning, but they will be aware of the hurdle. So, for example, it might be like, I'm constantly stressed, or I'm constantly arguing with my partner, or I always feel tired. Like the problem, the pain will be how we then discover what is the conditioning or the belief. This is also why in my first session, I do a thing called a life and business audit. So it's like the life audit will rate key areas out of 10 where you're at. And then that will really highlight, not only to me, but to the person doing the audit, because they're also unaware a lot of the time, where the areas are that the struggles are most happening. So that's like the key first question, is where do we need to work on? And a lot of the time people come in thinking it's a business problem, but it isn't. It's usually because everything you are reflects outside of you. So it's usually like more personal. So that's what the audit is about, is like really getting clear. Because if you don't know, we're going to find out. So yeah, we can do that.
I love that. I want to ask you a question. This is kind of maybe a little off topic, but is relating. I think from my experience, when I've spoken to other hairdressers and talked about problems and things that keep arising, it seems pretty similar. I think most hairdressers have got the same similar issues and have, from the people who have identified it, it's come from similar places. Is that something that you find? And do you think that hairdressers are like, is it a specific kind of person that ends up becoming a hairdresser? Because it seems that there's this definite personality type that gets attracted to this role.
That I definitely agree with. I think that there's definitely a type of person that becomes a certain type of job, craft, career, goes into that. I don't know the reason for that. I can only assume that it's some kind of creative outlet that is from creativity that hasn't been let out before. Like that's what I can assume. I think another part of it is also like the idea of serving people. I don't know one hairdresser that doesn't like being around people. So it's a people person kind of thing. But the thing with the common issues, I could not agree more. And this is where I'm going to go a little bit woo. I'll try not to go too woo, but it's the idea that
we love a little bit of woo here.
Okay, perfect. I want to make sure it's always the right audience to go woo. But it's like this idea that human suffering is one suffering. So every problem that we individually face will be something that humanity has faced before. So every problem point or pain point that comes into any coaching session is very rarely something that I haven't heard before. And the pain point might look different, or the result of it might look different in a different person's life, but the core suffering or wound of that is a humanity suffering. So yeah, it's definitely something that I see a lot. The pain points are similar, especially if we're in the same career and craft, because they will relate even more. But yeah, it's just like an idea that the human suffering is one suffering and that there is a way around all of it. So don't be afraid. You're not the only one. Anyone listening to this, anything you're feeling, you are likely to not be the only one. So yeah, you got support.
I absolutely love that. So earlier you mentioned that how this process would start is that you would have a phone call with someone. Does that mean you can work with people all over the world?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually one of the things I love doing, because it really highlights how similar we all are, no matter where we are. And even from this conversation with you, like we resonated from the second we started talking. And we're halfway across the world. So yeah, it's the beauty of being able to work online as well. Like most of my services are online. So yeah, we would start with like just a Zoom call, really getting familiar with each other and understanding the pain points and where you're at. And then yeah, we go from there.
Fantastic. Well, like I said, for the listeners, I will link all of your links in the show notes so that people know where to find you and how to get access to your services, because I feel like every single person would benefit from doing this work. I really do.
I agree. And this is what I say in most of my content. Like, this is for everyone. Because I used to start just talking with hairdressers, but then, like I said, I realized how much it goes outside of the industry. So I actually totally agree. And my family is so sick of me hearing me say that. I'm like, everyone needs this. But yeah, it's only if you're ready. Like, it's never going to be a good idea to do it if you're not ready. So that's a point I'd love to stress, is like, if it's not for you, it's not for you. And that's okay.
I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I kind of went through this like self-development, self-discovery journey, probably starting about 4 or 5 years ago. And before that, I was not interested. I was like, don't talk to me about it. Don't want to hear it. It's too hippy dippy. Like, I'm not here for it. And then the second I got into it, I was like, everyone needs to know this.
Yes. Oh my God. I could not resonate with that story more. And it was actually one of my bosses in the salon I used to work in. She went on this like whole journey of self-development. And to be honest, looking back, I still think it was like really too far gone. But she would drum on about this idea. And I used to be like, oh my God, like, what is wrong with you? And now I look back and I'm like, she actually had a point. Like, everybody needs this. And now I've turned into her. But yeah, I would never want to come from that perspective of like pushing it on people, because I know what that feels like. And like you said, you do too. It's like when you're not ready for something, or it just doesn't feel aligned to you, then you can never force something like this, because you're just going to be hitting a brick wall. So yeah, it's definitely for, if it feels right and it feels in alignment to you, then that's the time.
Yeah, I completely agree, because I think if you're in that point where you're like, I don't really believe in this, or it doesn't resonate with me, it's just not going to work, because you're not going to be open to exploring different ideas and trying to find that healing. You're just going to be like, nah, not for me.
Yeah, exactly. If you come at it with resistance, then that's what you're going to face, is more resistance.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely has to be
Yeah,
when you're ready.
I love that. I did a self-development course once, and it was all about working on mindset and overcoming like blocks and hurdles and things that you faced in your life. And I remember the lady who was hosting it said at the very start of it, like, I want you to leave every belief you have about this topic behind you, because if you come in this with like a know-it-all attitude, you're not going to learn anything. Like, you have to be open to the fact that you might learn something that you didn't know before, and be
Yeah.
open to other ideas, because otherwise, yeah, you have to have an open mind. You can't be closed off to do this work.
Yeah, completely. And actually, that's really inspired me to introduce something into my introduction, because that is a beautiful way to just be like, drop what you have at the door and let's start afresh. And if you're not ready for that, that's fine. But yeah, I love that. Really good idea. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, unfortunately, we are coming towards the end of our session today, which is such a bummer, because I feel like we could talk forever.
Literally, I was looking at the time like, it's going too fast.
But before we do wrap up today's session, is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners, or anything else that you want to talk about?
I think the main point of what I would love everybody to know has definitely been addressed, which I love. And I just love that there's been a platform to be able to share more about that. So I think the main core message is there. If I can leave like anyone with a gem, well, not really a gem, but just something to think about, is that just don't be afraid to go deeper. That's all I would say, is like, if you are feeling a certain thing in your life, whether it's a challenge with a person, your job, your health, whatever it is, there's always going to be a reason why that challenge exists. So just don't be afraid to dig deeper, because the resistance to digging deeper, or the resistance to emotion, is what is creating that block to start with. But if you just feel that emotion, and this is the gem I'll take away, is that what you don't feel, you don't heal. So if you don't feel that, if you don't get into it, then that block will keep existing. And it may not look like it's in the same area, but it will always exist in some space. So I'd love to just say, feel it, heal it, and don't be afraid to go deeper, because there's always a way around the challenge. I'd like to leave that gem.
As someone who's not an educator in that area at all, but as someone who has done a lot of self-work and personal development, I think I always was fearful about going in and going into those difficult conversations and bringing up those difficult emotions, because I thought it was going to be too hard and too painful, and I just didn't really want to deal with it. I wanted to shut it off. But I think the reality is, and this is just backing up what you just said, is that, yeah, it is hard and it is painful to dig those things up and work on them. But what's more painful is never bringing it up and never healing from it, and it consistently wearing you down for the rest of your life.
Yeah, could not agree more. You took the words straight out of my mouth. And just to give you guys an idea, like the emotion and the struggle of emotion takes 60 to 90 seconds for it to pass through the body. So it's like 60 to 90 seconds. It may happen in layers and it may come up more than once, but 60 to 90 seconds versus a lifetime of this hurdle, it's like there's no comparison. But as a society, we definitely like resist healing and resist feeling. And it's like when somebody cries, our instant thing is don't cry. Or when somebody like wants to show some anger, it's like, oh God, no, there's something wrong with them. But anger, emotion, crying, that is all normal. So it's about like being okay with that emotion, allow it to exist, allow it to communicate what it's trying to tell you, and then you can move through the hurdle. So yeah, totally love that you gave me the space to say that, because that's definitely a gem I'd love people to understand.
I really love that. And that's such a cool fact about the fact that it's 60 to 90 seconds, did you say, for it to pass through?
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
It's crazy because often, like when we're holding on to emotion, it feels like it lasts longer, but that's actually not the emotion itself. It's what we're resisting from coming out that is 60 to 90 seconds to pass through your body. And it doesn't mean to say there won't be times where you're, I don't know, crying for many hours, because I've had that myself and it's flipping hard. But on the other side of it is complete healing. And it's just so beautiful what's available when you dig through the barrier. So yeah, don't be afraid to go deeper.
Amazing. I love that so much. Well, Cristina, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. I think this information is so helpful, and I think I'm so glad that we're opening up this space for hairdressers to heal, because I think there has been a lot of toxicity in this industry for a long time. And I love that we're creating this safe space where we can talk about these things and learn how we can heal from them. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I really appreciate it.
I just want to thank you as well for the space to talk about this more. And yeah, you've created such a beautiful conversation we've had. And I have also been looking to creating a podcast, so I'd love to have you on mine and we can talk more about this, because I could talk about it until the cows come home.
I would
So,
absolutely love that. Thank you.
thank you so much.
I think we might have to get you back online again too, because we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, like I said, there's so much deeper to go.
Well, thank you so much. And guys, like I said, I will link all of Cristina's links in the show notes and on the socials, so you guys can find her and work with her if you want to. Would definitely recommend, if you haven't done any personal development or self-work, this is such a beautiful place to start, and it's really just going to help you get to where you want to go and achieve those goals that you're trying to achieve. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. I loved it.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Do you guys just love Cristina? I think she just has such a beautiful presence about her, and I think what she's doing is so helpful and so valuable to us and the people in our industry and the people within our community, because this stuff is so important. And like I said earlier, I really feel like this has been neglected for such a long time. So to be able to have someone come in and be like, hey, this is really important, this is something we need to work on, this is something we need to focus on, it's just really empowering. And I think it's something that I really love to try and encourage all of you to just take a bit better care of your mental health, take a bit better care of your physical health, and make sure that you are taking these steps to avoid burnout, because burnout is so relevant within our industry. And so it's really important that we're taking care of ourselves to try and avoid that from happening. And guys, I just want to say thank you so much to Cristina for taking some time out to come and have a chat with me and share what she's doing, because like I said, this is so important and so powerful, and I just think that she's a beautiful soul, and I loved having this conversation with her. So I'm so grateful to her for taking some time out to come and chat, share her story, share what she's doing and the importance of what she's doing, because I think this stuff is so important. So thank you again, Cristina, so much. I think so many people are going to have gotten so much out of this episode and really are going to be able to take this with them to make sure that they are taking care of themselves and take the next step in their journey to make sure that they are looking after themselves completely and able to be a better businesswoman because they are taking care of themselves. So I just want to say thank you so much. Guys, if you loved today's episode, I would absolutely love for you to leave it a good review, give it a thumbs up, give it a like wherever you're listening, would be so helpful. I would really appreciate it if you could support my channel in that way. And if you haven't already, come and join me on the Instagram and the TikTok. I share inspiration throughout the week as well, and it's just a great community to be a part of. If you ever have any questions that you'd like me to answer, please feel free to send me a DM on Instagram. I'd absolutely love to answer any questions that you may have. And if you are someone in the industry who has a really cool story to share, it could be something like how you set up your business, the journey that you've been on as a hairdresser, or something that you're doing now that's really innovative and new to the industry, or just some services or anything that you're doing within the industry that you think could be helpful to the community, I would love to feature you on the podcast too. So please, if you have something you want to share, reach out. I would love to share your story as well. Like I said before, the best place to do that is to reach out to me on Instagram and just send me a DM there. Guys, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope that you found it really helpful, and I look forward to coming back on Thursday to give you an education lesson on the podcast as well. Thank you guys so much for listening in. I appreciate you and your support so much, and I hope that you have the very best week. Thanks, guys. Mwah.